due to her informative climate change answers and knowledge. She's going to help us talk. We're going to switch gears a little bit towards lake planning and its use in townships, but obviously she is a wealth of knowledge, so let's make use of her being here today. During Noelle's 15 years as manager of Tay Valley Township Planning and Building Department in Eastern Ontario, Tay Valley received a number of recognitions, such as for its leadership in lake water protection from RVCA and MVCA, for their promotion of tiny homes for affordable housing from Algonquin College, as well as for climate change from Climate Network Lanark, and for facilitating of an age-friendly community by the province of Ontario. They're busy over at Tay Valley. She didn't get here from nowhere. She started 30 plus years ago with a portfolio that includes working as planner for regional district and BC. She's worked in transportation demand management. She's worked as vice president of Plan Smart New Jersey, working with the statewide Smart Growth Economy Project and watershed planning for central Delaware tributaries. She also has done work in equity with Isles Trenton New Jersey. And even before that, she got her start with her BSc from Trent University and then a master's from UBC's School of Community and Regional Planning. So she's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience that she's bringing to our local community. So everyone, please welcome Noelle.
Thank you. You're making me feel a bit old. I thought this was a really interesting question that Mike posed to me. He knew that Tay Valley Township official plan was the only one in Lanark County, and I don't know about Eastern Ontario, that actually references lake management plans in its official plan. So he thought it might be interesting for me to talk about it so you guys could think about whether you would want something like that in your community's official plans. So, great. So, lake management planning started 20 years ago, and it was supported through a grant from the Ontario Trillium Foundation. The Friends of the Environment Toronto Dominion also provided funding. I don't actually know if the Rideau Lakes Environmental Foundation provided funding or just provided expertise. I know the Friends of the Tay watershed provided expertise, as did the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. I think the Mississippi was involved too. And the Audie Lake Association was really instrumental in this because they were the test pilot for lake management planning. So let's go to the next one. So the way it evolved was Audie and then subsequent lakes would undertake state of the lake reports. And so they would get volunteers to look at the surface water quality. And most of the lakes that were involved had decent databases. So they'd been collecting data on this, some of them from the 1970s. And they had evolved to the point where they thought, we need a lake management plan. So they looked at the typical things that you would think about when you wanted to understand your lake. So let's go to the next slide. And one of the things I really like that I learned about in preparing this talk was they did a shoreline assessment. And there are people from Audie Lake here, so maybe they know if they actually sort of boated around to do this or if they did it from air photos. I don't think the air photos we have today would really allow for such precise measurements. So I think this is brilliant. And it would actually be really interesting to know if the red areas had changed to be more natural in time, or whether more unnatural shorelines had evolved in time. The other cool thing about Audie Lake, no, that's fine, is that it's split between two municipalities. So Tay Valley has sort of the south part, and Drummond North Elmsley has the north part. And I've always been told anecdotally that Drummond North Elmsley is more developed, and their shoreline would probably be in not as good shape as Tay Valley's. So these lake management plans evolved, and it's kind of cool that this topic came up 20 years later. So, they started to be planned in 2004, and then my understanding is that the Audie Lake Management Plan was finalized in 2008. I know that Christie Lake was next, but I couldn't find on their website actually when that happened. But Adam Lake and Long Lake adopted their lake management plans in 2009, and then Pike and Farron and Little Silver and Rainbow Lakes came along quite a bit later, but they also adopted one in 2018. So let's go to the next slide. So when we were doing our official plan update, 5 lake associations came to the township and asked that their plans be included in the official plan itself. I think they felt that they put a number of years of work into creating these lake management plans. They didn't want them to sort of just sit on a shelf in somebody's cottage somewhere, wherever the lake management plans are held by these associations. They wanted the township to consider them when there's an application on a lake. And so they actually became included as an appendix in the township official plan. And if you have a chance to look at my little trifold display over there, I laminated the page that has the official plan sections listed, showing which lakes have their management plans in there. The reason why it was an appendix was so that we didn't have to do an official plan amendment if new lakes wanted to have their plans added, because an official plan amendment is a whole swack of work. But if it's just an appendix, we could add their name. So it was really easy to add Little Silver and Rainbow Lakes in 2018. So then in 2019, we did 2 separate official plan amendments that were a heck of a lot of work. And they were for 2 lakes. One was Farron and one was Adam. Because lakes in our area, I think they're pretty progressive. So they reached out to the Ministry of Environment on their own, I don't even know about this, and talked to the ministry about a lake capacity model that the ministry was creating. And they said, we'll be your test pilots again. We'll be happy to have you test the model out on us. And so what the model did was it considered the lake watershed as if there was no development happening there. And so they kind of recreated, if we took all the cottages away, how much forest might they expect to come down to the shore? How much wetlands might they expect to be around the lake? And they determined the amount of phosphorus that would be going into the lake naturally if there was no development around the lake. And then they looked at the lake phosphorus readings that the lake associations were getting, and kind of setting those to one side as the control. They ran this model taking all the development that happened around the lake, so how many cottages, if there was a marina or something like that, and they ran the model to see what the phosphorus level in the lake was. And instead of going by what still pretty much happens in the province, is there's this one number that if your lake is below, I think it's 10 milligrams of phosphorus per liter, if you're below that, you're considered good health. And if you're above it, maybe you have some problems. So instead of taking this one number to apply to all the lakes across the province, they did this model whereby looking at the lake without any development, they then doubled that amount of phosphorus, and then they looked at what the actual lake number was, and if the lake amount of phosphorus was higher than the double with no development, they said you have a problem and you should probably try to do something about it. So for Farron and Adam, they had a problem. Their numbers were higher than the rest of the lakes in the township that they've looked at. They were pretty significant. So the lake associations came to council and said, we're worried about this, and you should be worried about it too, because if our lakes aren't healthy, your tax base isn't going to be healthy. So council directed me as the planner to bring in an interim control bylaw. And what that means is, for a short period of time, for an interim period, no development would happen on the lake. So you control development, shut it down, stop it. The province allows an interim control bylaw for 2 years. So we thought maybe we'd get all the work done in a year. We didn't. We had to extend it to a year and a half. But we met with the Ministry of Environment, the conservation authorities, the Lake Association representatives, and said, what should we do? And so one option was, we're not going to allow any more summonses on either of these lakes. You know, we're done. No more development. And people thought, well, maybe that's a little bit too dramatic. What if we allow severances but require that the frontages be wider, the lots be deeper, and what if, since the real problem was phosphorus, if a lot was too shallow or had some topographical reason why, topographical reason why they couldn't get their septic system 30 meters back from the lake, then they would be required to add a component to their septic system that removed phosphorus. Because I hadn't realized it till we were doing this work that normal septic systems only remove nitrogen. So I have to add this special little tank that has an anodized metal rod in it that collects the phosphorus, and then maybe every 10 years you have to replace the rod. So at the end of the interim control bylaw, council agreed to undertake 2 big, opening up the entire OP, swack of public consultations, to create 2 amendments, 2 official plan amendments. One for Farron and one for Adam. And the point of telling you this is the official plan amendment is a powerful document, and hardly anybody really pays attention to it. They pay much more attention to their zoning bylaw. Everybody wants to know what their property is zoned. But the official plan itself is a series of policy guidelines, as well as restrictions. So, it's generally got a land use map that tells you this is where ag should go, this is where settlements should go, these are our nice natural heritage features. And then it usually has a map with more information about constraints, like you're not going to build on that brownfield, you're not going to build in that provincially significant wetland. And as well as having those maps, it has all kinds of policies around, again, employment, environment. So by adding these 2 policies, we said, the land use changes, the severances, the lots have to be bigger, where your septic goes changes, what kind of septic you use changes. So I think it's important for people to read their official plans, even though most of them are long. They're usually over 100 pages, some of them are up to about 200 pages. But you can focus in on the sections that are more important to you, maybe as people who care about your lakes. Maybe focus in on the natural heritage sections, or where they think growth should go in the township official plan, and understand that you can really bring some kind of lake protection. So when all this was happening in the past couple of years, the province actually included in its provincial policy statement, which sits up here above county official plans and then township official plans, it actually included the requirement for lake capacity analysis. And I don't know how many of your planners realize that they could take that sentence, it's just like one sentence, I think in section 4 now, because we have a new provincial planning statement, not provincial policy statement anymore. So I'm like, it just came into effect October 20th, so I'm still wrapping my head around it. So I think it's section 4 now, where natural heritage stuff is, including water, and there's one sentence in there that says, lake capacity analysis should be considered. And what they mean by that is this model from the Ministry of Environment about phosphorus. So if you're having real concerns about a large development happening on your lake, or you're seeing a lot more algae in your lake, and it might just even be people's septic systems failing, or just not enough vegetation around the shore to capture that with the roots, capture the rainwater, bringing nutrients into the lake, you might want to ask your planner, so do you ever think about this sentence about lake capacity, and are you aware that the Ministry of Environment has this model? And I don't know kind of how strong the ministry is at the moment on defending that model. And what I mean by that is if they were called to go to the Ontario Land Tribunal and say, yeah, this model is really something that tells you unequivocally no more development. They weren't all that keen to do that when we were doing this work back in 2011, but they've had a lot more opportunity to test it and use it since 2011, so maybe they would be a little more keen, especially since it's in the provincial policy statement. So why did you put it in there if you weren't going to back it up? Ministry of Environment would be my question to them. So getting back to whether you think a lake association, lake management plan should be in an official plan, I tried to think of the pros and cons. So it's important that the township would have regard for your lake management plans and your goals. The township is not going to require itself to conform to your lake management plan the way we have to conform to the provincial policy statement, because I think that they would feel that their hands are too tied. But it is important to have regard for the lake management plan, because it's like just another form of democracy. Your residents, your lake members have their voices captured in this lake management plan, and so they deserve to be listened to, in my opinion. It does make it, take a little more time for me or another planner to review the application, because we have to remember to either pull the lake management plan off our shelf or go look for it on a website and think about the application that's in front of us and think about the goals and the data from the lake management plan. But, that's fine. That's part of our job. It's interesting. The Lanark County planners meet quarterly. So they met about a month ago, and I mentioned I was going to give this talk, and I asked if any of the other ones had lake management plans in their official plans. And the planner from Drummond North Elmsley thought they might, but he wasn't quite sure. But the urban planners, urban for Lanark County, so Carleton Place and Perth, were horrified. They said, why did you let them do that? Why would Tay Valley have included the lake management plans in their official plan? Because they really felt that it would tie the municipality's hands. And, God knows we've got enough things that we have to contend with through the Ontario Land Tribunal when a developer says, everything that you have in your zoning bylaw or official plan, we can hire people to say that we've met it, even though the planner is saying, no, I don't think you met it. So I kind of knew where they were coming from, because they both have huge cases before the Ontario Land Tribunal at the moment. But I think that's not really a con. I think a lot of time, a lot of people power was spent creating these lake management plans, and they represent residents' views, and so they should be included. So let's go to the next one. So it's not like you could just whip up a lake management plan tomorrow and hand it into your council and ask them to adopt it. Our council, anyway, wanted to be assured that the plans that I would be referencing had scientific integrity. So it was really important that when the plans were being created, they had kind of worked with or consulted with or had their plan run by the local conservation authority to give it sort of a blessing on, yeah, your science is good. And council also wanted to know that the lake management plans represented a representational proportion of the owners around the lake. So they wanted to know, they really weren't going to take a lake management plan from a lake that couldn't say it had more than 50% of the property owners around the lake as part of its membership. And I know membership fluctuates and, number of property owners fluctuate, but when those lake associations came to council to say they wanted their plans included, they had all held an annual general meeting where they had gotten a motion from their members to say that they wanted their lake management plan included. And they were also able to say that at the time of that motion, whether or not it's still true today, they had more than 50% of the property owners around the lake as members, and that at their AGM they'd agreed. So there was sort of a social test as well as a scientific test. So 10 years on from having the Lake Association management plans in the township official plan, I find them helpful. I find that it's important for them to be updated so that I can feel confident that they remain relevant. And I know the Audie Lake Association went through a process to update their management plan. They did a survey of their members. They've probably also updated some of the science. So I think it's important that they really are living documents, your lake management plans, so that you have credibility with council. So that I'm sure, you're all updating them, well, not so much the plan, but updating your data, because you do have volunteers, out on the lakes taking readings. But it probably is of value to also just run by your guiding principles or demands, so that when you ask council, if you were to do this, and they say, well, how relevant is the plan? You can say, yeah, we did an update, or we did a verbal discussion at our AGM about whether this was still relevant or not, and we passed a motion. So, but what I have found is that, and I don't know why, but since COVID, I don't get as many responses from lake associations as I used to. Like, you're required by the province to circulate all zoning applications, minor variance applications, some site plan applications to, conservation authorities and various agencies. Our township also circulates them to lake associations for comment. I'm not getting those comments anymore, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if people think, well, the lake plan is in your OP, we don't need to comment. I don't think they're thinking that. If you go to the next slide, I'm wondering if people are just burnt out. Burnt out because they're aging, and so now they're taking care of aging parents. Burnt out because their kids are wondering if they have an economic future or an environmental future. This is a threshold. It's really depressing. But typically, anything in the reddy purple is dangerous. So, I really focus on climate change. I just am compelled to do that. But actually, the biggest threshold boundary that's being passed, according to this study, is biodiversity. So, I think people sense that. So let's get off this slide. But I think people see that, you know, whatever, there's different birds, there's less frogs, there's less insects, there's climate change, there's, you know, flooding and heat deaths and all this. So I have to tell myself to take a deep breath every once in a while. And there are local resources, and Paul already mentioned Climate Network Lanark. They ran a series of lectures this past year about how to electrify Lanark County. And even if you're not in Lanark County, I would suggest you go to their website because they've got lots of detail on resources that would apply anywhere in the province. And they, you know, will be doing more of this type of outreach and education. And even if you don't live in Lanark County, come. The other thing is we have a local author in Perth named Bonita Ford, and she wrote this book called Embers of Hope. And 10 years ago when she wrote it, I thought, oh my God, that's so touchy-feely. I don't have time for that. I've got like work to do. But now I'm really grateful because I think I'm burning out a tiny bit. But I've become rejuvenated, just by pausing and acknowledging, you know, this stuff is scary crap. And, you know, we need to take care of ourselves. So I just wanted to throw this up there as local resources. Let's go on. I'm almost done. The other thing that's happening in Lanark County, and probably in your counties, is that people have to update the county official plan. They're supposed to do it every 5 to 10 years. Lanark County's is so out of date. I don't know how the provinces let them get away with it, but now they're looking at provincial population projections. And kind of the interesting thing is that the Ministry of Finance sets these population projections. They told the county back in 2020, prepare for 14,000 new people. Now they told them just this past year, prepare for 31,000 new people. So I assume that's the same for, you know, all of your areas. So if they go to the next one, where are we going to put those people? That's like a big topic your official plan, townships, counties should be talking about. Where are we going to put these people? And on the converse, what do we want to protect? So Paul mentioned that for the first time, the county is going to be looking at a natural heritage system. That would be really interesting for you guys to look and see if your county has a natural heritage system plan, map. Does your township have a natural heritage system plan or map section in their official plans? And what a natural heritage system is you've got nodes and corridors. So your nodes are really easy usually to identify because they're things like provincially significant wetlands, areas of natural and scientific interest, places where birds migrate. Like you're looking for kind of large, important biodiversity features. The corridors are tricky because you need biologists to tell you where the animal's moving. So that's a bit trickier, but like if worse comes to worse and you're just desperate to get something done, you could just put your corridors along big rivers because animals like to move along rivers. Just, you know, so you have something. And I think that the lake associations, you guys might have that local knowledge. I know some of our lake associations, including Audie, have like an iNaturalist page, the app on your phone, where you can identify things that you've seen. They have like an incredible amount of species that they've seen and identified through their iNaturalist app, and maybe they know how they move too. So that would be really helpful to planners to know where these things are moving. So let's go to the next one. And another exciting innovation in how we can plan for our communities is Frontenac County is the first municipality in Eastern Ontario, if not the province, to become a municipal utility for communal septic and water systems. So I don't know if that's showing up very well, but what you can see is on the right side, you've got about 16 lots in yellow and then some green that you're going to protect. But on the left side, the far side, you've got like 30 single-family lots in yellow. You've got an apartment in turquoise. You've got a community center in violet. And you've got a lot more green that you're protecting. Because instead of having individual septic systems that need a big area for their bed, you've got a communal septic system that looks like a railway car, and it's just running all the effluent through a media inside that railway car. So you can cluster your density instead of having it sprawl, and by clustering it, you can create a vital hamlet or village, because you've got enough people there to support a restaurant and a store. So that's just something to think about. We don't have to be stuck in this landscape of individual septic systems anymore. And the fact that the county is a utility means that they can put up the money to backstop the replacement of those systems, whereas municipalities refused to do it before because we didn't want to own that type of infrastructure. So it's a huge breakthrough. Okay, so I think I'm on like the last slide. I would encourage you to make some noise. Lake associations generally are respected by councils. You can influence budgets, like it's budget season right now for every municipality. Look at what your budget is being allocated to. Like, is it all going, to roads, which most of it does, or is some of it going to, support affordable housing, or buy an electric vehicle, or something else? Like, this is your money, and you should know how your council is spending it. And you guys have all this scientific expertise from doing your water testing, and you've got social capital because you vote, and you're a group that votes. So if you have like a number of lake associations in an area that come in all together, like they did to Tay Valley, and say we want to be in the official plan, you have clout. So I think the last one is just my contact information. So, oh yeah, I brought my computer up so I wouldn't forget to answer somebody's question over here. You wanted to know if anybody was sort of looking holistically at all the impacts of climate change, or if they're just looking in silos. So the federal government released, probably about a year ago now, a huge analysis for all the provinces and territories by sector, like transportation, whatever, how climate change would be expected to affect a province, even a subsection of a province, by sector. Mostly in Eastern Ontario, it was more rain, not necessarily when you want it, and more heat deaths. Ontario doesn't even track heat deaths. Quebec and British Columbia do. So if you feel like writing a little email about that to the Minister of Health, please track heat deaths. That would be something to do. So yeah, there's all kinds of holistic stuff, which makes me want to ask the organizers, are you going to send out the slide decks? Because I really want Paul's and the ELA. I'm going to fangirl for a second. When I was at Trent University, like you mentioned, in the 80s, the experimental lake areas was something that we learned about, and it was just like, oh my God, this thing exists? This is so fantastic. And when the Harper government wanted to kill it, I wrote letters because I knew like what a valuable resource this was, so I'm so happy it's got stable funding now. The last thing I wanted to say, I gave you a couple websites to look at. Canadian Association of Physicians for Environment, CAPE, have really seized on climate change. They have these great campaigns. One of them was called Code Red, for the environment, for climate change. And when doctors are concerned about something, I think it has a lot of significance behind it. So if you want to look at another website, look at the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, Climate Change. And the other one was the University of Waterloo has an intact center for climate change. And I think that intact has something to do with them partnering with insurance companies, because insurance companies are pretty frightened about this whole climate change thing. And we kind of should be too, because we don't want to wind up like Florida where nobody will insure you anymore because of climate change. So yeah, we really, really need to push these politicians who, as the gentleman said, seems like affordable housing and whatever has knocked climate change off the top. One way to talk about it is, even when you're talking about affordable housing, we need to make sure that housing is climate resilient. So it's not like we can only talk about climate change when we're talking about climate change. We can talk about climate change on any topic you want to think of. You want to talk housing, you want to talk economy? Well, let's just make sure that you understand how climate change is going to work in there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We are going to circulate the microphones for questions again. And I see a few hands going up nice and speedy to get a little bit more of Noelle's knowledge. So just give us a moment. All right, we have one question to start. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Noelle.
Get right in there.
Okay, Larry O'Hare from the Greater Bob Tinker Lake Association. I guess my first comment is the fact that back in 2005, and this is prior to the amalgamation that occurred with the government that was established in the late 1990s, we set up we were one of the first in the province to basically establish a lake plan in consort with, because we are a watershed for the Rideau Canal, in consort with Parks Canada, with the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, with Watersheds Canada, who played a major role in assisting us. We took a number of years to go around the lake. 1,425, I believe, was the number of lakeshore properties that we actually took photographs, and each property was not only identified, but a report went forward, and then we distributed it to every one of those cottage owners around the lake. The challenge in doing something like that, again, because it took a great number of years, is that we, first of all, had 3 townships that we had to deal with, of which Tay Valley is one of them. It has a significant part of the lake up in the north, east sector, and also with Central Frontenac and South Frontenac as well. What we found, and I go to your question about 50%, we as a lake association only have memberships of about 300 plus members in our association. What we have found through our lake networking group is that, and this is groups all over Eastern Ontario, is our numbers have gone down almost in every case around Eastern Ontario as far as membership. We're not going to ever achieve the 50%. The reason why, we're not quite sure. We've set goals, but we are not going to achieve that. So that's one issue that I think we need to, I'd like you to respond to. The second issue has to do more with the work plan. The lake plan is important, but the most important thing is the follow-up. We've established a 5-year cycle where we review what we would like to do. You mentioned 10 years, but a 5-year cycle of reviewing what have we achieved, what have we not achieved, and what do we need to do further work on. And that's a key part of making any lake plan work. So I'd like to comment on that, because the 10-year piece, yes, for some of the long-term components, that may be good, but the fact is that much of the work that you want is done in a short-term period. The third point that I would like, and again, thank you very much for an excellent presentation, is the role that we as a lake association can play. You say that you haven't heard, from a number of lake associations. We are getting your information, and we do have a person that's designated to be the liaison with our association with yours. But with development, with a number of developers who are around our lake, we have people on our lake who are telling us that they have 750 acres that they want to develop. And that's going to happen in the near future. We have no idea where the 750 acres are, but it's a concern of ours. How do we move forward with that? Thank you.
Okay, so the first question about the 50%. That's something that council wanted, I guess about 6 years ago when we first put the lake management plans into the official plan. Possibly post-COVID, we could talk to them, like it wasn't like a bylaw where they wrote it down that it has to be, so it was just more for their level of comfort and also just to make sure that, you know, a lake association hadn't been overtaken by a board that just totally did not represent the people, which happened to Pike Lake for a little while, but it's been rectified. So I think it would be fair, you know, if you guys wanted your plan to be included in the appendix, just to make the delegation to council and say, you know, first of all, we have this huge lake, an enormous number of property owners. And our memberships have been declining, as council would understand. There's been a lot of volunteer fall off since COVID. But yet, you know, you sincerely believe that it does represent. And it would be a public meeting, so if people feel that your plan doesn't represent them, they'd be free to come too. And if they can't be bothered, then the people who were bothered to come and say it does represent, I think that would have some weight. So I wouldn't be too hung up on the 50%. I've already forgotten the middle question, so you can ask me again, but I'm going to go with the next one. So development around your lake. That's kind of one of the things that you could either ask the planners or maybe you can do yourselves. I know Farron Lake did this. They just were able to identify what vacant lots were left on the lake, and then come in and talk to the planner and the conservation authority, perhaps, you know, whoever's relevant, septic inspector, to say, with a property this large, given its topographical features, given the health of the lake, would the township even be open to development, and what kind of development? So I know on the D&E side of Audie Lake, when a big subdivision was going in, it was told right off the bat, you have to be 300 meters back from the lake before you start building any homes. And you can only put non-motorized vehicles in. You can only have canoes. So the dock that you're going to get to serve that is going to be for canoes and kayaks. So even though you feel like you don't know where this is going to happen, you could sort of proactively figure out, well, where are these big vacant chunks of land on our lake? And like, would they be developable, or is the PSW covering most of them? So, like, that would be something that you could kind of proactively look at. What was the middle one?
I guess the middle question, I don't know if there's a question or an observation, had to do with can't read my writing. The idea that okay, we're working in sort with a number of people, and again, because there's 3 lake associations, or 3 townships that are involved with our large lake association, how can we better or best
Oh, yeah, right. You were saying that we do circulate and you guys do look at it. Maybe it's just a quick email back saying, you know, whatever the topic was, zoning number 2024-8, no comment. Just so it doesn't feel like it's gone into a void.
And I think, again, this is happening to more than just our lake. We have two Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry offices that we have to deal with.
Oh, wow.
We're dealing with Parks Canada, the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. We're working Mississippi.
Yeah.
Looking at septic systems and our contacts in Mississippi. Where this is a type of thing that they're fractionalizing and creating all types of challenges for lake associations in dealing with different government offices. And it's a challenge not only to the volunteers who are trying to represent our lake, but it's also a challenge to have those steady and reliable contacts that we can go to and say, we're really concerned about this. And I guess I just wanted your comment on how we can best address that.
Yeah, so every year we have our corporate assistant contact the lake associations to make sure that we have the right name for the president and somebody else, maybe the secretary. So maybe instead of us just reaching out and checking a website or something and then phoning the number, instead of the corporate assistant just doing that, I should actually set aside some time to call the president and say, do you have any concerns? Do you want to get the routine rezonings where somebody's just, rezoning from a 30-meter setback to a 28-meter setback? Or do you really just want to get the ones where we think it's a big deal? We do that with the Algonquins of Ontario because they are so understaffed and so overwhelmed they haven't even settled their land claim yet. So we have an agreement with them where essentially we have to send to them legally, but if there's something we think is really important, we'll contact them. And otherwise, we won't be worried if we don't hear back from them. So, okay.
Our second microphone.
You're not old. I was a consulting planner in quite a few of the Rideau Lakes areas and over into Frontenac through the 1980s. And we eventually came to an agreement that we should hire Michael Mikowski to do the Rideau Lake study completed in 1992. And it has a number of recommendations that have continued on and are reflected in several official plans. The idea of having the lake plan actually incorporated as part of the OP always seemed really important to me because it has more teeth there and at least at that time had enough Planning Act oomph that you had to at least have regard for it, or in case of zoning, you had to conform to it. And that's a lot better than just an appendix, I think, that can be ignored. And I wonder if you have any experience to impart to us about areas where an appeal has happened and been more or less successful because it was part of the OP versus not. And wrapped up in that, of course, is the recent Planning Act changes that have taken so many appeal rights away. So that's sort of a second part of the question. And a third part is, would the development permit system be a more effective way for municipalities to consider in trying to achieve some of the lake protection goals that we've been working on for decades?
So the development permit system is a really interesting question. There's only two, as far as I know, in Ontario. One's in Carleton Place, and somewhere in Southern Ontario has it. So instead of having your zoning and official plan, it's kind of like they're combined, and people don't have to do rezonings. They either sort of conform to what's been zoned or they don't. So it's a really different process, and I don't have enough experience to know if that would provide more protection. I think that would be a really good question to ask the Carleton Place planner and maybe even ask the Ontario Provincial Planning Institute to do like a little research paper on it. I know the province wants more municipalities to go to the development permit system. I think they think development will happen faster because you won't be able to go to the OLT as easily, which leads into your second question. Having lake plans in an official plan, whether sort of as an appendix or actually somehow more part of it and more strengthened, whether that's helped at an OLT hearing, I can't answer that because a township hasn't been appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal on any of the lakes that are referenced in Appendix A. We are currently facing an appeal on Big Rideau Lake that is set to go to the Ontario Land Tribunal in the first 2 weeks of December. And it'll be very interesting because it is part of the Parks Canada Canal, and there's a whole bunch of variables involved in it. And the official plan is going to be key. But the reason why Big Rideau Lake is being protected is through Parks Canada's requirement to us that we include special protections for the Big Rideau Lake as part of the federal canal. So that one will be interesting to see how well that holds up. And I forgot your first question because I was working backwards.
I guess it's the whole ability to participate and to have an appeal right.
Oh, right.
Disappearing.
Okay, so I don't know if everybody knows, but the provincial government had a couple of bills recently, Bill 32, I think it was called More Homes Better Act, something like that, and then Bill 135, which I am kind of sorry to be facetious, but was like even more homes, even faster and better act. So, I'm not kidding. If you look them up, they both have homes in them, and they're all about building more homes faster. So, what this most recent act did was remove citizens' appeal rights for rezonings, subdivisions, minor variances, site plans, leaving you with the ability as a citizen to appeal official plans and something else. I can't remember what the other one is though. Maybe it's just official plans. Like what else do we do as planners? You can't appeal subdivisions, you can't appeal zonings, you can't appeal minor variances, you can't appeal site plans. Could be that official plans is all that's left for you as a citizen. There are specified persons, which turn out to be agencies, like the Conservation Authority and other agencies like Hydro, who can appeal, but you have lost your appeal rights. So if you don't like that, again, I would write to your MPP, because that is essentially to allow development to happen without a second thought. The person bringing the application can appeal. So if the council says no, the developer can appeal, or you as an individual, if you wanted a minor variance and the committee said no, you could appeal, but nobody else involved kind of representing third party, speaking on behalf of the lake, on behalf of nature, on behalf of yourself, because this thing is going to put shadow on you. It's gone. So yeah, that's my answer to you.
Which makes me think that the OP policies where you can appeal are even more important to get stronger and give it teeth. And,
Yeah, good point.
So I'm not looking forward to the next Planning Act amendment. It'll be let her rip anywhere.
Maybe it'll be a different government. You know, who knows?
The voting cycle does come around. Noelle, before you run away, I want to give you a really great big thank you for sharing your passion and your knowledge for the environment and for using it through planning to help care for our environment and our township, and for sharing your knowledge so that these other members of other townships can go back to their councils and ask for more, because more is possible. So thank you so much. And